In tonight's news edition, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour checks on the conditions of Jordanian pilgrims in Mina and thanks the Saudi leadership for making the pilgrimage a success. Intense gun battles between the rebels and the government forces continue in Syria despite pleas from Arab and Muslim nations for a ceasefire during Eid al-Adha. And a two-day round of negotiations between Iran and 6 world powers ends in Geneva after participants agree to meet again next month. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour checked on the conditions of Jordanian pilgrims in Mina in the holy city of Mecca. Mansour, accompanied by Minister of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs Hail Dawood, listened to the pilgrims' feedback on the services and facilities provided for them. He commended efforts by the Saudi leadership, represented by King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, on the care extended to the pilgrims to make the pilgrimage a success. Mansour also voiced appreciation for the media that made the pilgrims well connected. Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Judeh and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry discussed in Washington bilateral relations and latest developments in the region. The meeting dealt with the peace process and the Syrian crisis. Judeh and Kerry noted the deep ties between the two countries in various fields, focusing on the need to continue coordination and consultation on issues of common interest. They also discussed the Palestinian and Israeli peace negotiations, stressing the need to exert maximum efforts to succeed. Judeh stressed Jordan's firm position under the leadership of His Majesty the King in support of the Palestinian issue and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. They also reviewed latest developments in Syria, stressing on the need to end the cycle of violence and bloodshed and calling for a fast settlement that ensures the security and safety of the Syrian people. The National Union Islamic Centrist Party and Watan blocs formed a new parliamentary coalition. Representatives from the 3 parliamentary blocs announced that the coalition consists of 58 deputies. Deputy Adnan Farajat said the coalition will draw up charters and general principles in the upcoming phase to improve the parliamentary and legislative work in all fields. In Syria, intense gun battles between the rebels and Syrian forces continue despite pleas from Arab and Muslim nations for a ceasefire during Eid al-Adha. The Human Rights Observatory Group reported clashes in most provinces and the deployment of warplanes on the eastern desert city of Deir el-Zur. According to reports, at least 27 government soldiers were killed during intense clashes in the past 2 days. In Dir'a, 21 people, including 4 children and 6 women, were killed when a minibus hit a mine in a rebel-held territory in southern Syria. A 2-day round of negotiations between Iran and 6 world powers ended in Geneva in a bid to resolve a decade-old standoff over Tehran's atomic program. The participants agreed to hold their next round of nuclear talks on November the 7th and 8th. Iran called the 2-day talks fruitful and said it hoped for a new phase in relations. The Iranian foreign minister said the two sides had for the first time agreed on a joint statement after the talks, but declined to give further details. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, who is leading talks with Iran on behalf of 6 world powers, said world powers are carefully examining Iran's proposal, which aims to resolve the dispute over its nuclear program. She told a news conference the discussions had been more detailed than at earlier meetings, calling them the most detailed that they had ever had. Iran earlier indicated a readiness to scale back uranium enrichment, suggesting it is willing to compromise for a deal to win relief from harsh economic sanctions. It suggested it was ready to address calls to give the UN atomic watchdog wider inspection powers as part of Tehran's proposal to resolve its nuclear dispute with the West. The Republican-led U.S. House of Representatives and Democratic-led Senate are expected to approve a bipartisan deal to raise the debt limit and end federal shutdown, clearing the way for President Obama to sign it into law. White House spokesman Jay Carney briefed reporters on Obama's reaction to the deal and said the agreement will reopen the government and remove the threat of a debt default. He said the United States is close to the point where the Treasury Department cannot borrow new money to meet its debts obligation, which is why Congress needs to move fast.
Secretary Lew has made clear in his testimony and in his letter to Congress, and that is that the Treasury Department will exhaust borrowing authority at the end of the day tomorrow, Thursday, October 17th. And that, beyond that point, the Treasury would have only cash on hand. It would not be able to borrow new money to meet obligations. There are no winners here. We've said that from the beginning, and we're going to say it right up to the end because it's true. The American people have paid a price for this. And nobody who's sent here to Washington by the American people can call themselves a winner if the American people have paid a price for what's happened. And the economy has suffered because of it, and it was wholly unnecessary. And let's just remind ourselves that we're not even out of it yet. This is not done. We need action to be taken so that the government can reopen and the threat of default can be removed.
Local residents in the Philippines remain in fear after a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit the South Center yesterday. The death toll rose to 144 as rescuers dug through the rubble of collapsed buildings. The Philippine president visited the quake-hit areas and said his administration was ready to help in the rehabilitation and relief efforts for displaced people. So far, the number of injured rose towards 300, with at least 23 people missing. We get more in this report.
The central Philippines more closely resembled a war zone after a powerful earthquake struck the islands of Cebu and Bohol. Buildings have been toppled, roads are potholed, and bridges have collapsed. The 7.2 magnitude quake has caused landslides and widespread damage to infrastructure, made worse by more than 800 aftershocks. The death toll is nearing 100 and the number is only expected to rise. Shops have run out of food and water as the roads to many villages are still cut off.
It's very difficult because the market is very far and the roads are all cracked and damaged.
Motorbikes lie idle and people queue for petrol, which is in short supply.
It's very hard. We have no gasoline and the stores are also closed.
The last time a quake of similar magnitude hit Bohol province was in 1602.
At least 14 people were killed and 50 still unaccounted for after a landslide hit a town on an island near Tokyo in the aftermath of Typhoon Waifa. Over 30 homes were destroyed when part of the volcanic mountain side of the island collapsed over a residential area. The resort island and a popular weekend destination for residents of the capital, Tokyo, was in the direct path of the typhoon as it swept up the Japanese coast. The Metropolitan Police Department dispatched a special rescue unit to the island, and the Tokyo fire departments were being mobilized along with Japanese self-defense forces. Russian scientists have lifted from the bottom of Lake Shibarkul what they believe is the biggest fragment of the meteorite that exploded over Russian mountains in February. The 570-kilogram fragment is believed to be the main part of the meteor. Preparations for lifting the fragment took several weeks and cost about $100,000. The meteor blast and ensuing shock waves shattered windows, injured almost 1,200 people, and caused about $33 million worth of damage. Uruguay beat a second-string Argentina 3-2 and hit the woodworks twice, but failed to get an automatic ticket to the World Cup finals in their closing qualifier. Uruguay coach Oscar Tapares said the experience was important and his players expect to qualify after playing Jordan. The Uruguayans finished 5th in the group, handing 4 automatic places to Argentina, Colombia, Chile and Ecuador, and will meet Jordan over 2 legs in November for 1 more berth.
All matches are different. The game against Jordan will be played in 3 weeks, a bit more. And I know it's a strong team at home in a small stadium after a trip that's very long. With different schedules, all the effort must be invested to play that kind of match, just like they will have to do when they come to Montevideo. So I think, I said it the other day, it would be a great mistake on our part if we thought that Jordan couldn't create problems for us.
And finally, a quick look at the weather. Relatively cold tonight in most regions and cool in the Jordan Valley with northwesterly moderate winds. Tomorrow it'll be mild in most areas with the appearance of high clouds and moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba can expect a pleasant night and hot tomorrow with northern moderate winds picking up at times and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour checks on the conditions of Jordanian pilgrims in Mina and thanks the Saudi leadership for making the pilgrimage a success. Intense gun battles between the rebels and the government forces continue in Syria despite pleas from Arab and Muslim nations for a ceasefire during Eid al-Adha. And a 2-day round of negotiations between Iran and 6 world powers ends in Geneva after participants agree to meet again next month. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.